Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We love summertime, and I feel like the pool has changed our summers
because we don't leave the house now.
It's like really amazing, and people come over. Like we're hosting and having everybody over.
True.
I had to do a little repair on the pool, little
right.
leak, but I got that fixed.
It's nice having a handy husband.
Thank God for YouTube. Finding
actually,
all that
Mike thought that there was a leak. I thought there was a leak in the bottom of the pool because all of our grass was brown except in this like one spot. And I was like, that's leaking out of the pool right here.
We didn't have much rain.
But I think it was just splashing or whatever. But anyway, we figured out the leak. Yep. Yes. Yeah. We found the real leak.
Anyway, not that you really care, but I love summertime.
Not that any of them are coming to our house for the
No. But we just had some listeners over, which was great. Who become good friends.
Yes. If anybody is going to Catholic Family Land this summer,
which is right around Steubenville.
We announced this last summer.
We forgot to this year. So we're kind of in the middle.
Yeah. So if you're going to Catholic Family Land in Bloomingdale,
just outside of Steubenville.
Yeah, like send us an email. We would love to see you. We're good friends with the Catholic Family Land people. We can go out there. But anyway.
Yeah. And for those in the Messy Family neighborhood, those who are members, somebody put up some camps that they go to, some that are for kids, some that are the whole family go to. And so for those who are looking for advice or looking for places to go, if you're a part of the Messy Family neighborhood, you can find out more about
Catholic
those.
Family vacation kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we also wanted to let you know that we have right now our appeal is going out.
That's right.
So if you're on our mailing list, you would be receiving, a physical letter.
So anybody who's been a past donor, who was given to us before, we sent out a letter. So check your mail. If you haven't gotten it already, you probably should have.
And in the appeal, I think it's pretty interesting because we won't tell you what the appeal says in there, but it has a update on some things that we're working on that we're excited to share with you. So we're not going to tell you what it is. So you have to read the letter.
Well, and you if you didn't get the letter and you're like, hey, I would like to support Messy Family.
Hey, we can send you a letter. We can send you an appeal letter.
Do it, and you can go to
it's
Messy Family Project.
But we could send it through.
MessyFamilyProject.org/give. And you can see a little bit about what we're trying to raise money for right now as we continue the work we're doing right now, serving thousands of families, but also a new initiative that we think is going to really help and support family life out there.
And we want to also encourage you to go to Shalom World. .com.
Shalom World. Just say
Shalom
that.
World. Shalom World. And you can either go to their website.
Which is a media outlet, right?
Yes, it's a media outlet. You can either go to their website or you can download their app to watch our series, Family Guide to Parenting. So we are very, very excited about this series. It is, you get to see us.
I was blown away with how great they did. They did a great job. They made us look good. I mean, it was awesome. But we also had some amazing guests, some great, both experts and witnesses. Like anybody we brought on, they weren't only just kind of giving some great wisdom from the textbooks. Yeah, it was from their own lived experience, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And we brought on some priests, we brought on some religious who have seen this in the lives of married couples, as well as parents. We brought in
psychologists and doctors and evangelists and just all kinds of people tackling 12 different topics having to do with parenting. So you can go on there right now and you can see. I think they're all out now.
Yeah,
they were releasing them one at a time, but I think by mid-July, almost all of them are out. But we're very proud of this series. I think that God's going to do a lot with it. And I think it will really help our listeners.
Yeah,
honestly, I really think that it's really going to help people. So there you go.
So those are little encouragements. Again, we at the Messy Family Project, we're all about trying to help busy moms and dads and they're embracing their call, moving from the urgent to the important, moving from sporadic and chaotic to a little bit more intentional to bring some sanity. And we think this series can really do it. And that's actually somewhat related to the appeal we're talking about, trying to bring some greater opportunities for parents out there.
Right.
So let's go into today's topic, right?
Right. So I'm just going to hold up here this lovely book. So called Catholic Social Teaching for Youth. So it kind of reminds me of like the UCAT, like the Youth Catechism.
Right.
So this is Catholic Social Teaching for Youth. And we are interviewing Nancy from Catholic Sprouts.
Right.
They were the ones that put out this book. And it is another tool, just like the video series is a tool. This is a tool for parents to explain those kinds of things, those parts of church teaching that may be a little bit confusing, or maybe you understand, but you don't know how to say the right words.
Right. And just as a quick thing. So Catholic social teaching, I mean, we do go into it a little bit, so I won't give a full description, but it's just like, how do we as Catholics interact with the world around us, right? Not
how
just
do we
in our
engage
spiritual
the world
life,
as a Catholic.
And it's not highfalutin. Even for those who are not Catholic, this has a treasury of great insights and resources for you. But as a Catholic, when you're trying to step in and teach your kids, it gives you kind of little lessons and sayings and a lot of things all along the way to
and
make
applications, things to
how
make
to make it real. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're going to talk to Nancy Bandzuch, right? Is that right? I forgot how I should look.
We say it at the beginning of the interview.
Yeah, sorry. But Catholic Sprouts, we know Nancy from Catholic Sprouts, and they do great work over there. But this is a great new book that they have out.
Yeah. So we'll just jump into the interview. Enjoy.
All right. Well, we are so excited to have our special guest with us today. You might know her from Catholic Sprouts if you're familiar with the podcast and the resources that they offer. But Nancy, I knew I was going to mess this up. So
Bandzuch. We practiced this.
I did. And I doubted myself. I lack confidence, Nancy.
Yeah, it's the Z. There's a Z in it.
I don't know why the Z just throws me off.
I have
Bandzuch
to ask you,
is just an easy name.
What was your maiden name, Nancy?
Well, my maiden name was Verley, like very, but with an L in it.
See, so you're used to like the complicated, this is how you say my name, I guess. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and I got to tell you, going through childhood with a last name that started with V, I was thrilled to jump up the alphabetical order to be. I still am.
It's the little things, it's the little things.
And I tell my kids all the time, you don't understand what it is like to be at the end of the alphabet. So.
See, you're moving to the front of the line. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So
well, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the show. We're so glad you're with us. And it feels like we have so much in common with what you've been doing and the mission and the focus of what you have there.
But to go ahead and get started, why don't you just tell our listeners real quick about Catholic Sprouts? Like just what is the mission of Catholic Sprouts and just what are the resources that you offer? Because I think our listeners are going to be really interested.
Yeah. So Catholic Sprouts it started as a podcast that we started just over 4.5 years ago. And so what happened is I watched my older sisters have kids and made a lot of judgments about how I could do parenting better than they are. So I thought that parenting, being a Catholic parent would be easier than it ended up being. And I was several years into being a Catholic parent and was feeling really lousy about how I was failing to catechize my children because I really thought that teaching the faith would be like a natural thing, like we would just naturally gather and liturgical crafts would just be like this easy, life-giving experience. And it wasn't the case, like I would lose my temper. There was always a baby crying. Right. And then I would feel really, really terrible about myself because I knew how important catechizing my kids is and how it needs to be me and my husband. So years ago, we actually discovered a podcast that the kids would listen to when they brushed their teeth. I think it might still be around. It's called Chompers. And it was like, you get like little factoids for 2 minutes because that's how long they need to brush their teeth. And I just remember thinking like, this is really cool, but they're learning about like animals or secular holidays or whatever. I thought, wouldn't it be cool if while they're brushing their teeth, they were like getting a little dose of catechism because they just listened to this podcast so intently. So I looked around. I'm like, well, is there like a short form podcast for Catholic kids? And there wasn't. So I actually created Catholic Sprouts for my own kids.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah. Because I know that my recorded voice is much more patient than my in the moment mom voice. And they also listen to a recorded voice much more intently than my in the moment mom voice. Right. So we were the first listeners to Catholic Sprouts. We listened to it every morning over breakfast while I'm scooping oatmeal and, negotiating with children. And I guess like one of the biggest gifts that the Lord has given me is that through Catholic Sprouts, he proved to me that I wasn't the only one that struggles to organically catechize my children
Right.
you know, we've heard from people all over the world that use it, you know, every single day, that it's this huge problem solver for them. And it's just such a gift. I'm sure you guys feel this. It's such a gift to help people in the way that you needed help, and to see that, you know, you aren't the only one that finds it hard.
So real quick, tell us just your family. So you obviously have children, you're a mom, and you have, what are the age ranges and, you know, of your kids?
So we have 6.
Okay.
Our oldest is in 5th grade and our youngest is 1. We're very orderly. Boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl.
Oh,
so, pattern.
That's unusual.
Every time we have a baby, the kids are always like, "Mom, is the pattern intact?" And so far, it has been. So we're always very nervous.
Yes.
I don't know. The pattern's a big deal around here. So.
But I think and I know, I'm sure that your experience is similar to ours in that being a parent is the best preparation for this ministry that you're doing. Because like you just said, you're like, I wish that I had this, somebody telling me these things, somebody giving me this encouragement or these tools or whatever. And because you're a mom, I'm a mom, you know, we're parents. And so, and having that experience, you know, okay, this is what kids are looking for. So the Catholic Sprouts podcast is directed to the children, right? Like you're talking to them.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, it's been interesting 4.5 years in, you know, the Holy Spirit, when you let him, will take you on a wild ride. And it's so interesting what you learn when you just kind of step out on the limb. And so, of course, you know, we have, I think, about 10,000 people tuning in every single day. So that's classrooms and families. And of course, it's always an adult hitting play. So what we hear from, you know, over these last years, what we've heard from just remarkably is all the parents that have had reversions, deeper conversions, all the things, because they're in the room too. And I think we all know this as parents, that like we will do things for our children that we wouldn't necessarily do for ourselves.
That's
like,
right.
I am determined to. Yeah. Like I'm determined to catechize you. So I will make that, you know, a routine around turning on Catholic Sprouts, whereas we might fall off a Bible in a year or whatever it is if we're doing it on our own. So I know, I mean, obviously Bible in a year is a huge success. A lot of people haven't fallen off, but it's really, and it's kind of like this looking in a mirror at myself. It's like, yeah, that is what parents do. They will do things for their children. And so what's kind of been like a big kind of focus for us is this whole family mindset, that especially if you're playing a podcast, there's little ones in the room, you know, mom and dad hopefully are there. There's a range of kids. So I feel like what we're constantly trying to stretch is just say, like, are we offering a story that's going to be interesting for a 2nd grader, some sort of deeper question to ponder for an adult, you know, music that's going to engage the toddler in a high chair. So just kind of thinking whole family, what can we do to unite everybody?
Great.
So do you have a background in education?
That's what I was going to ask you. Are you a teacher, educator, or just a mom who's got a passion for this?
Yeah. Well, so, you know, 100 years ago, before kids, I was a high school English teacher. Yes. So I taught high school English for a long time. And actually, my specialty was public speaking. So it's funny. I was like a competitive speaker. And so I remember at the time thinking like, well, this is just fun, but this isn't going to serve me. And I'm like, well, look, you can actually the skills you cultivate in college can actually benefit you.
It is possible.
You are being prepared and you didn't realize it.
Yeah.
I know. Well, I know. It's really funny.
And I love the comment you made that you were doing it first for your own kids, because the recorded voice is much more patient than your real voice, which is kind of the disclaimer we make as the Messy Family Project all the time, right? You know, this is it's you know, we are trained professionals. No, we're, you know, this is a messy endeavor, training, forming the hearts and minds of our children, orienting them towards heaven. So,
so in regards to the podcast, I'm just wondering, so what are the types of topics that you cover in, you know,
because it's a daily podcast. There's a lot out there.
I was like, wow, daily, that's a lot. That's a lot to do. So how do you do that?
So So we do weekly themes. So each week is kind of around a theme, and I'm pretty much here like looking at the liturgical season and making those decisions in the moment about what we're going to talk about. But over the course of the last 4.5 years, we've had different seasons of themes. Like actually in the fall, we went through a whole like arguments of the faith. We kind of used Brandon Vought's book on, I think it's like Why I Am Catholic and You Should Be Too. I think that's the book he wrote. And so, he wrote it at this like converting collegiate educated people.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, how can we like take that about 4 steps down,
Yeah.
but still, which is honestly where most parents need it to be,
Yeah.
and just, like, how can we prove that God is real? How can we prove, that Jesus existed? And
Nice.
so just going through his arguments at a way, way, way lower level.
Yeah.
So we spent several months going through that slowly. We've done, I'm trying to think, like we did like 10 commandments once. We're a different week on each of the commandments, the
Awesome.
Beatitudes, the gifts of the Holy Spirit. But, it's kind of, a lot of it is kind of informed by the saints that we're celebrating that week, the liturgical season, with Pentecost, we talk a lot about what does it mean to what is conversion? When we talk about the birthday of the church, what does it mean? What is conversion? And just kind of going through that. And I'm always trying. So I watch my kids listen to the podcast every day.
Focus
So I've
grouping
become
is what you
very-
mean. You're focus grouping.
Yes, exactly. And they are not afraid to give me direct and blunt feedback. And
oh gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
But it's really helpful. I mean, even if they don't give feedback, I watch them, and it's helpful to be like, okay, like that was a little too much explanation. And like, I should have told that with a story instead of a quote or something. So,
Oh, that's great.
I'm just wanted to speak to our parents too about why what you're talking about, like why teaching our children the faith is so important. Because some people will say, well, I send my kids to Catholic school, or I send my kids to the parish school of religion, or why is that so important for, I know why it's so important, and I think people have heard us talk about it, but I would love like that different
Your
perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. On that motivation of teaching our children the faith.
Sure. So what I really try to communicate with people that listen to the Catholic Sprouts podcast is that the most important moment of using the podcast is not when I'm speaking. It's when the parent speaks to their child afterwards. And I always say that the best thing to do is just say, what did you hear? And then have them answer that question. And that's it. And then go from there, respond, maybe share what you heard. Because, and we all know this is true, like it's just kind of meaningless facts out there in the world if they're reading it in a book or a teacher's telling them or I'm telling them. But as soon as it comes out of the mouth of the actual person that God put as an authority figure in their life, their parent, then it becomes so much more meaningful.
Right.
And, I'm sure you guys know this too, that like the way the faith has been passed on from one generation to the next since Jesus walked this earth is the family.
Yeah.
That is the only proven way that it has transferred from one generation to the next. So I think it's probably more likely that that's the way that it happens than that we know something better now that it happens in parishes, because that's been proven that doesn't happen.
Right.
So, I really see Catholic Sprouts as just another great resource.
Yeah.
There's so many great books. There's so many great things, but I'm still just kind of a fact giver, storyteller. And until a parent, and I always believe, I believe this with all my heart, that the best way to teach the faith to your children is to sit next to them and learn it together.
Yeah.
That like learning together and then having a conversation afterwards, that's actually how we
And you know what?
help our children become Catholic.
I've often thought too that it's such a great example to your children to show that you're always learning. Like
That's
you
right.
never stop learning the Catholic faith, And there's some things that I already know, but as you're, if I would be listening to a podcast like yours or Bible in a Year or whatever, that it's so great to be able to say, I never knew that. Did you hear what they just said about that? Wow, that's something new for me too. And you're kind of modeling for your children. This is how we learn. Like, this is how I grow as a person and we can grow together. Like we're obviously at different places in our lives and all of that, of course, between me and my child. But so much of what we do, we model for our kids. And that's so very important.
And another point here is that parents need help, right? Parents, we need help in a lot of ways, but the simple reality is that sometimes the beautiful and awesome truth of the Catholic Church sometimes feels out of our grasp, or we're not sure how to articulate it. I get parents all the time asking me, well, how do I have this conversation with my teenager?
Yes,
They want to be able to have something as a guide, as an aid, a conversation starter in a lot of ways. And I feel like that's what our hope is in our podcast. It's more of a conversation starter. And it sounds like that is really at the heart is trying to equip and really empower the parents to have some of those deeper conversations. So if you don't feel like you have a full grasp of the faith or can't articulate what the truth is or what have you in a full way that your kid might receive, well, the podcast is actually going to be a great opening and a great way to begin. And it's little doses, it's like, the apple a day, it's a little bit. That's really great. And I love that it's offering parents more ways to communicate and engage with their kids and really step into their role as a parent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it is, we all know that it's not enough to simply go to church on Sunday to really pass on effectively faith. That is the most important part of our life as a family in so many ways, right? But that has to be, okay, then we're beginning, right? This is the starting line. And now where do we go with this? How do we allow that to bear fruit in our family life?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, I wanted to switch, if that's okay, to talk about your latest resource that you've put together.
Another tool. So here, we got to show it to our video.
Yeah, so those who are watching.
Very nice looking, beautiful artwork
really
in this.
Well done.
I love the artwork so much.
I know. The artist is Jen Olson, if you want to look her up. She's a great Catholic artist. She's awesome.
So cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
So it's Catholic social teaching for youth. Now, that might sound like a mouthful. People are like, uh-oh.
What is Catholic social teaching? Number one.
Yeah. And so why don't we start with that? Do you want to start with? Okay, so this is a new resource that is more come out, right? And you're providing this for parents as well as for, I imagine, for schools that might be using this as well. But for parents,
our focus is always whole family. So parish can use it however they want, but this was really written with the heart of a parent, like you said, just encouraging conversation, being like, here's your script, parent, sit down and have these important conversations, because I could sit and record this whole book, but it needs to be from you in your voice. Yeah. So Catholic social teaching is a big word. You're right. It's it refers to the social and moral teaching laid out by the Catholic bishops. And so the USCCB broke it down into 7 themes and 31 topics. The first theme is the dignity of the human person. Then it's our call to family and community, rights and responsibilities, solidarity, care for the created world. I think I forgot. Oh, workers' rights and the right.
I was going to say, I was going to quiz you. I was like, well, wait a minute. Let me see if you get it right. You got it. You got it.
But so it's big. And so 31 topics, and it covers all of those, because the reason we created this is because I'm sure I'm getting the same questions that you are, like my kid, so, I mean, it's like everywhere. Like my daughter is in 4th grade. She is doing community theater here in our little town in Minnesota, and they had to introduce themselves using pronouns. I mean, and it's like this, heaven bless her, she thought it was an English lesson, so I think we're okay, but still.
Yes.
She's like, it was so funny. Anyway, it's funny and it's sad, but all the things, like it's just everywhere. And there's so many topics in here. Abortion is at the front of conversation. It's like you can't turn on the news without that coming up. Even like suicide is a topic that the U.S. bishops have laid out.
Yes.
There's just so many. And so these things come up. And what we have found with our audience is that, if you're a Catholic that takes your faith seriously and you've investigated these things, you might know the truth. And the reality is that if you have a copy of the catechism or access to the catechism online, you have all the answers.
Sure.
We didn't come up with any new answers here. But the struggle is to communicate these things in charity in a way that is complete, that will be sturdy when they come against the messaging in the world. And also that really, it's not just rules. It always is referencing back to God's beautiful plan for all of these things.
Yeah. It's the positive foundation upon which to build so many ways. I always think of Catholic social teaching as how do we engage the world as Catholics?
Right.
How do we look at our interaction with, the civic community, as well as just the laws, the interactions, the work, all that goes on out in the world. How do we look at it? And the church has spent a lot of time thinking, praying on this. Yeah. And there's 2,000 years in some ways of history, but at least, since, Rerum Novarum. So we've got hundreds of years of some great insights that the church has spent thinking about all these things.
And talking about examples, what I love that you added in here is for every topic, there's a saint that you can see, okay, well, for this issue, for example, like of abortion, here's someone, this is how they engage this issue as a Catholic, Saint Gianna Molla, and so that is really valuable for parents because first of all, stories are great, kids love stories. And so it's always nice to add that in there. But then also, like Mike was just saying, how do we engage the world as a Catholic? Hey, by the way, we have an older brother or sister here in the faith who can help us,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it was really putting together this book was really interesting because it made us, okay, so the way it's set up, I should say that the way it's set up is we wanted to so let's say that your child, it has a trans friend all of a sudden, and they come home with all these questions. My gosh, what is it? What is it? What is it? And you're just like, it's scary. I just want to roll back time and put you in a bunker in the backyard. That would be my reaction.
Right.
And so you just think, okay, I need to own the messaging here, right? This needs to be me. Because if I shrink, they're going to go on Instagram, they're going to go to their friends, and they're going to get a whole other story. So I need to own it. So our hope is that then parents will have this on the shelf. They pull it off. There's no prep. You just sit down and read it. And so the first section is just really making totally clear what church teaching is. Totally clear. Then the next section, we really looked out in the world and we thought, okay, what are the lies floating around out in the world about this?
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting to look at those because they're powerful, like on same-sex marriage, the lie that love is love. I want to be on the side of love, that
who doesn't love love?
Yeah. Who's hating love? It's so powerful. So then to dig into that. And then we realize that as you dig into that lie, you ultimately are led to something that Christ did in the gospel. Because even though he didn't speak directly about transgenderism, same-sex marriage, or all the modern things we're dealing with, they were not issues at the time of Christ.
Right.
If you dig into that lie, you always discover a human wound at the bottom of it, always. And so, one of the most kind of tricky ones that we really had to carefully pray about was transgenderism, because I feel like that's kind of the scariest one that we're all dealing with right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And especially for us raising, young kids. My kids are entering junior high soon. And it's just it's this big old question mark in there. Like, how do we deal with that?
Yeah.
So we're like, well, what is the wound? And what is kind of our even societal human wound that is leading to all of this confusion?
Yeah.
And after much prayer and conversation, we realize that it's an identity wound,
Mm-hmm.
and this question of who defines me. And, with all of our isolation in our modern world, this tendency for us to just fiercely try to define ourselves and to throw off everyone else's definition of us. And, and so we were thinking okay, how does Jesus directly speak to this? And we came across the story of Zacchaeus, which is one of my favorite Bible characters, and just this, he really is this character that was defined by these people, defined by those people, so many definitions, but you see him encounter Jesus and receive his true identity.
Yeah.
And it's just this reminder that like, no matter what we might feel, these wounds that are influencing us, it's this, I think especially young people need to hear that. Like, it's not about shutting the door and getting on your phone and trying to figure out who you are. It's about seeking a true encounter with Jesus Christ, because he will define you.
Right.
And so, but it was just really such a interesting journey. We worked on this book for 2 years, and to constantly, like, we would write these sections and be like, but I think there's something deeper.
Yeah.
I think we need to dig deeper. And it also, what ultimately we discovered is that even on these topics that feel kind of far out there and not something that I'm dealing with, perhaps, it was this real like unifying feeling of like, you know, I'm 41 and I have identity issues, you know? And so just kind of like this common ground of humanity, that we all have this brokenness, and that we're all in need
just manifests in
Jesus. Yeah.
Right. Like it manifests just in different ways. And these are all different ways that our broken humanity, you know, is searching. We're, you know, searching.
And I love the simple fact that there's a lot here, right? You know, there are a lot of issues that we are confronting, maybe not today in your family at this very moment, but there's a lot that the church has wisdom to bring. Exactly. It has a witness to bring. And we need both the truth and the love. We need to be able to extol and know this is the truth and this is the path of life, and know how to apply that in a loving way in the particular situation that we're in.
Right.
And for so many parents, you know, I just think about the identity, you know, as an issue, and even beyond just transgenderism, it's who you are as my beloved son or daughter. And we often talk about how part of our life as a family, part of our culture needs to be conferring on everybody a sense of identity, a sense of belonging and mission. And when you have a tool like this is giving you easy access to say, before you're confronted, ideally, with the pain and the wounds that the world is experiencing, before you're inflicted on that, we're breathing life into who you are. We're breathing into you and conferring who you are in the eyes of God, right? And that you know, our hope is that you can have truths like this, that you guys have put together, and other resources where you're layering on your kids a true, good, and beautiful, that they know who they are. They know where they belong, right? And so that when they do encounter it, they know there's something off. But what you do in the book is you help them be able to articulate it. Because I feel like we've been talking more and more recently about how it's not sufficient for us to simply teach our kids to do the right things. That's vital, but we also need to be able to have an articulation of why those are important. So they don't just become confronted with a lie in the world, or they're like, why do I always do this? Why is this just a habit that we do just by checking the box? We got to have a deeper sense of intentionality with the way we're forming our kids today, because we are in a crazy mixed up secular culture that doesn't share our values and wants to deform our kids. This is a great resource to hopefully do it on the front end, but at the very least, when you're confronted with it, you now have some ammo, you have some conversation and scripts to follow.
Yeah,
absolutely. And, you know, I think it's also important for us to like remind ourselves of what we were like as kids. Like I grew up in a Catholic home. My parents like were very clear, just communicating. But on a lot of these things, it was a rule, and a rule is not nearly as it really doesn't change your heart, you know?
Yeah.
And
so that's true.
I have like a clear memory of when I was 16, working at a coffee shop for the very first time, and meeting and befriending my very first, you know, homosexual man who was very kind and nice to me. And it took about one conversation with him to decide that my parents were wrong, that they like what they taught was outdated and like they weren't informed. And like, that's all it took, because it was just a rule, and I could easily decide this rule is wrong.
Yeah. Right.
And so I think just handing our children a list of rules, they'll just respond that way.
Yes.
And I really have learned through the Catholic Sprouts podcast too, that children can handle some larger explanation, you know?
Yes.
add a story, spend some time with it, and they really can. They can see what is beautiful.
That was
They
actually
really
something
can.
I was going to
Yeah.
ask is like, how early would you have some of these conversations? Because there is like the whole like, sexual identity and all of that,
Yeah.
but there's even things about,
just abortion
even
we talked about,
civic
yeah.
duty and terrorism
Yeah.
and like all of those big, the dignity of work, like all of those kinds of, it's a very broad, obviously the bishops gave us like, here's all of social teaching. So there's a lot of things.
Yeah.
So how
How
early
age
do you
appropriate
think?
are
Yeah.
some of the things?
In your experience, what have you found?
Yeah. Well, so our oldest right now is 12. And so there are some that we have gone through with him in this book and some that we aren't ready to. I think it's like a true discernment for children and even for specific children. Like, for example, divorce is in here during the call to family. And we, unfortunately, and probably not unique, my sister-in-law went through a really ugly divorce and it was super confusing. But it was a really actually powerful time for us to teach our children, like, why is marriage permanent? What does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that show us about the very heart of God? You know, and and it's tricky to do it in the moment without like villainizing that spouse or making that family sound like it's not a family anymore. Like that, those are tricky little landmines to navigate. And so I think like topics like that, I mean, there's the dignity of animals is in there. Those could definitely be done with someone as young as first grade. Yeah. I mean, there's deeper levels that, an older kid will get more out of, but when a pet dies, it can be really traumatic, but it's also a really beautiful moment to be like, this is why God created animals. This is why we love them. But this is why we love humans more, That's why this is why we have a funeral for a human being and not an animal. And so, with all those things, there's a whole bunch of topics, of course, that are dependent upon children having the sex conversation from a parent first, which I'm sure you guys do talk about this
Absolutely.
too. But yeah, my thing I've been telling parents is like, if your kid's in 7th grade and you haven't had the sex conversation with them, you're behind. You need to do that. That like needs to be a priority this week. Just get a book. There's tons of good books. I'm sure you guys have great recommendations for those where you can literally just open a book and read it, say all the words and make yourself uncomfortable. But anyway, if someone's listening to this and with the junior high kid and hasn't done that, it's time. It is time.
Yeah. Right. That is very true. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and just for sharing all of the tools and resources that you have to help give parents the tools to help to form their children. Always recognizing that parents are those first educators. And, in our ministry and what you're doing is such a great resource for them. So thank you for that.
And as we close out, Nancy, could you, I'll give you your last words or encouragement, but also make sure you share with our folks how they can listen to your show, how they can find out more about your resources. And I'll leave you at the last word.
You can find us at CatholicSprouts.com. Everything's there. And I'm trying to twist my husband's arm to come to the Dominican Republic. So maybe if you guys go on the retreat.
Catholic Couples Getaway. Woo woo.
We would love to have you join us.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Oh my
gosh, I would love to be there. So we'll see. We'll see how it all goes. But maybe see you in the Dominican Republic.
Awesome. All right. CatholicSprouts.com for more on this and this great new resource, Catholic Social Teaching for Youth. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that that episode and that interview. Some practical tools again for moms and dads. I always, and we said this in the beginning, but it's like for busy moms and dads, we need help. And I feel like this book empowers us as parents to have some conversations. Because I'm like, we want this for all these other topics as well, right? Just simple things, not like they're full lesson plans that a teacher would do, but something that a parent would do to make it real, to make it practical from the youngest as they move up into older age. Yeah,
absolutely.
So anyway, I think it's a great resource for parents. I'd love to hear your reactions and feedback on this or other topics related. And again, we talked about the Shalom series. You can find that. We'll link out to that on our website, as well as you can find it at Shalom World. And if you would be so kind to pray for our fundraising efforts. We do
Please
this
do.
and the website, the resources, some of the mentoring, reaching out, being available to couples, all these things we do because of the generosity of our donors. So if you could step in and be a partner with us, this would be a blessing to us.
Makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And it would allow us to continue to serve and reach out to other families.
That's right.
All right. That's it. And until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you.